Hello everybody, welcome to Truth Me Free. My name is Nathan Wheeler and this is video number 5 of the series of my testimonial. If this is your first time watching one of my videos and you have not watched the videos that lead up to this one in their totality, that means no fast forward, no jumping ahead, no jumping out of order. It is really important. The comments that I get from some people where they're kind of like angry at me for something I said or something I didn't say, and then I'm like, well, if you continue watching the rest of the video, you'll notice I do say that. If you continue watching the video, you'll see that I kind of explain myself. And people are like, oh, I didn't get that far because I got angry and I turned the video off. So please don't do that now, or don't do that when you watch the other videos. Not that you can't get angry at me. You're welcome to do that, of course. It's a free country or a free world, depending on where you live, I guess. But the point is that the videos in of themselves start off a certain way usually, and then they kind of come to a semi-conclusion at the end. Well, the series in of itself does the same thing. We're going along a journey where things are kind of confusing, things are kind of up in the air. But what I'm telling you is, as the videos sometimes do, the whole thing will come to a conclusion. And so, if you haven't watched the other videos and you do go back, please watch them in their entirety before you get, a little bit upset, which some of the things I might say might do. And that's completely understandable. And I still welcome your comments. If you are meant to be here at video number 5, let's jump on in. So, this is the video where you're going to learn why I stopped being a Buddhist, why I never became a Mormon, and also why I never became a Muslim, or I did study Islam, and I did read the Quran. So, first part that I think is important is why I stopped being a Buddhist, since that's where we left off in video 4, is why I was a Buddhist. As I continued to read the Dharma, and I read about Buddha's life after he had reached enlightenment, I had gotten to a parable that really rubbed me the wrong way. I had mentioned this in video number 4, but I didn't tell you what it was. So I'm going to tell you the parable now. This is the beginning of me kind of going through the process of leaving Buddhism behind. This parable goes as such. There was a man who was a widow. He went to the market. He was shopping, doing his groceries, whatever, getting the things he needs. On his way back home, he noticed there was a fire. He looked real carefully and he noticed in the distance that it was his house that was actually on fire. He had 2 children playing in the house, so of course he freaked out. He drops his groceries, starts running in the house and screaming out, "Children, children, come out of the house is on fire, come out, come out!" That whole bit, right? Well, the children are too busy playing inside the house to even care what Dad is saying on the outside. They're just like, "Dad talking, whatever." Modern day it would look like this. "Oh yeah, Dad, I'm listening, what? Go ahead. Dishes are done, I promise." That kind of thing, right? So Dad's run into the house and he's just like, "Come out of the house!" And they're not listening. They're still playing. So he's freaking out, of course, because, the kids might die. It's on fire. So he yells to them, "Children, I have toys for you. I have the most amazing toys, but you have to come out of the house to get them because they're too big to get inside the house," or something along these lines, right? And the kids now, of course, they hear this. They're like, "Oh, Dad's got toys, what? Yes," that kind of thing. And then they run out of the house. They see their dad, they run, they jump in his arms, yay! They're waiting for the toys. The house collapses behind them because of the fire. The father turns the children around. They see the house. He says, "I don't have toys for you. I had to lie to you in order to save you. I had to lie to you in order for you to understand." So this is the parable that Buddha gives, and he says, "As the father is to the children, as I am to you." And I'm thinking, really? Buddha, just out of curiosity, what is it exactly that you lied about in this story you've been telling me? What part of it is the fib? You get what I'm saying? So I'm like, I hope that I end up finding out what it is, so I continue to read. I'm not giving a conclusion as to what Buddha meant with this parable. I'm only going to tell you what I further learned about Buddhism and what I further experienced while I practiced Buddhism. I end up reading the rest of the Dharma. I get to the point where Buddha turns 80 years old. He's an old man now. He reached enlightenment, and the whole idea from what I understood when I got to the enlightenment part was that he transcended. As I said, there was kind of 2 versions. One version where he didn't need his body anymore. He kind of dissipated and became one with all living things and all the universe and all of God. Energy would be a better term if you really understood what he was trying to explain with Buddhism, because he didn't believe in the whole God. If you believe kind of like a higher person or deity kind of thing, like he didn't ever like that. My point is, though, is that he obtained this super knowledge, superior true knowledge, as the Dharma likes to call it. after this moment, he comes back and he teaches what he told us, and he gets to the point where he grows old, and he gets ill, and he dies. Now, obviously, this throws a bit of a wrench in my wheel. Here I am holding on to the reins, going through this entire journey with him, as many of you are going through this journey with me through these videos. Don't worry, I don't throw a wrench in the wheel at the end. At least I don't think I do. So, what happens is he ends up drinking a soup, or he ends up eating some mushrooms, or some fungus, or, the most popular version is he eats some pork that was given to him by a blacksmith. What is a blacksmith doing cooking and handing it to the Buddha? I have no idea. But for some reason, blacksmiths all of a sudden are cooking and feeding Buddha. So he eats this pork in the most popular version of the story, and he shortly thereafter dies. Now, of course, the Dharma defends the blacksmith and says, don't worry, we won't teach the world that it was your pork that killed Buddha. Okay, but did it kill Buddha? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, pork is known as the dirty meat. Anyways, my point is, you know, Buddha died. Like, what the heck, man? I got on board when I was 8. I'm 16 now. I'm totally 100% invested into this situation, thinking that, you know, here I am. I thought I was so close to, like, understanding what enlightenment was and how to get there. And now you tell me you die? Like, dude, what is up with this story? How did you not even send a hint this was coming? You know what I'm saying? So it obviously really irked me, because now there's this little curve they put on the end of the story where it's like, oh, well, you can meditate into death, and that Buddha didn't really die, but that he just stopped needing to be reincarnated, and he was the first soul or spirit to go and not need to have a rebirth ever again. In a way, it kind of sounded like he officially died. Like, he was done. There was no rebirth. There was no life thereafter. It didn't, the way it was kind of written doesn't make it really sound like, you know, he's alive on the other end. There's a hint that the way I kind of got it was that he maintained his consciousness on the other side, and he wasn't rebirthed, but he became one with whatever everything is. Does that kind of make sense? If it doesn't, I understand. I'll later explain a similar concept in another faith system that I really got involved with that goes further and more detailed. But that's kind of the general idea of what I was getting here. I was just like, you know what? He died. That's the part I don't like. That's the part I'm not a fan of. And he said, don't worship me, don't pray to me, I'm a man. So even if he is conscious on the other side and he became one with the God, you know, you would think if he was all powerful, like he was able to transcend and come back, how come he doesn't come back again? Do you get what I'm saying? It's this kind of logic that makes me go, I wonder what the lie was. Do you get what I'm saying? Continuing my story, and I hope I haven't lost you already. I start going to Buddhist temple when I'm 16 years old. I get a car, I get a driver's license, so I start going to Buddhist temple. I'm doing the mantras, I'm doing the chants. I'm really trying to find out the truth of this enlightenment deal and what it means to become enlightened. As I'm going to Buddhist church, temple, I end up hanging out with the Buddhist folk who are there, you know, going to eat at their house, getting to become friends with them. By the way, sticky rice is awesome, but I don't know how to make it, so if anybody knows how to make sticky rice, please, ingredients, tell me how to do it in the comment box, because I haven't had sticky rice since I was a Buddhist. I love that stuff. Anyways, let's get to the important things. What I'm saying to you is that I'm going to this church, let's just call it, of Buddhism. And I noticed something super important. Yes, I'm learning the chants and the rituals and so on and so forth. And as I begin to engage people and try to question them in order to learn about the experiences me and my fellow friends are having, that we reach this plateau, I'm trying to find answers from anybody who will talk to me about what this plateau is and how we get past it. I'm also trying to find answers to these experiences, which I mentioned in video 4 that we're having, and what they mean. Why can I dream? Why is it that we can get into somebody else's dream? What is an out-of-body experience? What is astral projection? Why can I do it? I know I didn't get into that, but I'm going to, so stick tight. But I talk about the results that are promised to us when you do the yoga and the Tai Chi and the Qigong and the writing the Tao. And they're kind of looking at me with blank stares, and nobody seems to have read the Dharma. So I'm getting a bit frustrated. So I start to go to basically I come to the understanding that these Buddhist folks, though they do represent the religion of Buddhism in their meek and humbleness, they also represent all the other faith systems I have experienced up to this point in my life, in that they listen to what the person on the stage is telling them. They don't read their own faith book from front to back or in its entirety, and they just believe whatever they're told. It's more like they grow up in it, and that's the reason why they believe it. They learn the rituals, and it just becomes part of their daily life. It's a habitual thing rather than a seeking to know God or experience life or the truth thing. Does that make sense? This really breaks my heart. That's the best way I can tell you. It kills me because I was really hoping that Buddhist people were going to be different than the white man, if you will, because let's face it, you know, Caucasians, mainly Christians, right? That was what I was experiencing in the Caucasian American religions, was people weren't reading their own book. They were just hearing what was said. They were just going through the rituals, and it became more of a habit than it became about their heart and what they were really seeking after. I never expected this from Buddhism, yet here it was. I got to the point where I realized, you know what, I can't judge the followers. I need to get in touch with the leaders. So I began to engage the elders of the temple, the monks. And as I began to engage them with conversation, there was a particular day where I packed my bags, didn't tell anybody. I went to the temple to inquire about what I needed to do to become a Buddhist monk. Yep, I wanted to become a Buddhist monk. Could you imagine that? Oh, that would have been a bad day, right? People would be like, really, Nate? You, a Buddhist monk? You're so wound up. You'd be like, Om Namah Shivaya. What? You know what I'm saying? Would not have been a good deal. So, I did go down there, though, packed my bags, had everything ready, and I asked the head monk 3 questions that were the most advanced questions I already knew the answers to. And they dealt with things like the dreaming I had explained in video number 4. It also dealt with out-of-body experiences and astral projections, things that I had begun to experience at this point, but I had no understanding or control over. The dreaming part I had control over, but not the out-of-body or astral projections. And if you don't know what those are, don't worry, I'm going to get to them. So I began to talk to the head monk about these things, and he's just looking at me like, huh? And he goes, you can do this dreaming thing? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, you know how to do it. Like, you do it intentionally. I'm like, yeah. You know, I explained it to him like I did in video 4 to you. So he goes, hold on a second. He says something to a young monk guy, maybe 18, 19 years old. He tells him something. The guy goes away. The elder looks at me and goes, don't leave anywhere. Please, just hold on one moment. I'm like, okay, I don't want to go anywhere. I want to become a monk. So where am I going to go? So next thing I know, the young man comes back with about 8 to 10 other monks. The elder says something to him again, and they all sit down around me. And he looks at me and he says, teach us how to do this dreaming thing. Me and Bobby over here were just talking about doing that, and it was so strange that you're saying you do this. Please teach us how to do it. And I'm like, what? You're kidding, right? Like, you guys are freaking monks. What do you do all day? This guy was old. He was like maybe 60, 70 years old. People were like, that's not old. Oh, okay, I'm 16. To me, that's old, right? And I'm like, dude, you've been a monk probably your whole life. You're telling me you've never done this before? You're telling me you've never had an out-of-body experience? Come on. Really? That was the straw that broke the camel's back. I came here, saying the story, this is what I'm saying at 16, I came here to find a teacher because I had all these people who were asking the same questions I had, and I didn't have the answers for them. So I wanted to become a monk so I could possibly find those answers. Now here I am, this elder monk, asking me to teach him something. I'm like, no, this doesn't work for me. I grabbed my stuff, I left, and that was the last day I ever said I was a Buddhist. Now, this event, it had another major event that happened about a month to a month and a half before. But I just want to tell you the story in chunks so it flows and makes sense. The other event that I had was, if you remember in video number 4, I talked to you about what Buddha did in order to clean his karmic debt. He went back into his history, whether it be past lives or this life. He went back into his history and he forgave every person or thing that ever hurt him, offended him, or caused him pain. He also forgave himself for hurting anybody or anything, any form of pain, suffering, or wrongdoing. He then, the last step of this, is he forgave himself for allowing other people to hurt him or other things to hurt him, because he realized that all in all, we are responsible. This is called recapitulation. So in the future, I'm going to refer to this word as recapitulation. That's not the word that the Buddhists use. The word that I know of is recapitulation that I get from another faith system, which, again, I will explain in a bit. So as I am going through this process, I get through the first 2 stages. I'm now in the 3rd stage, which is where I forgive myself for allowing these things to happen. You start at your earliest memory and you work all the way up to your current day. Granted, I was only 16 years old, so I guess I didn't have too much to go through. Although it seemed like quite a bit. It took me a while to do this. Not in a day, I'll tell you that. So I'm doing the last part, between about 12 years old to 16 years old. As I'm meditating, first I did like really hardcore yoga for probably like a good 6 hours. And then I was going into some serious meditation because I really wanted to get through this and clean my karmic debt. As I was doing this, I was meditating on my bed in a lay down position called warrior pose. Not important, but just I was laying down meditation. And as I was staring up at my ceiling, the ceiling kind of, only way I can describe it, like a projection on a screen, it kind of just fizzled away and everything went black. So there was no roof, it was just blackness. Now the blackness all of a sudden had this little light that appeared, and the light just began to shine down. I know how this sounds. So all of a sudden, this figure appears and it begins to descend upon me. And I just feel this amazing sense of love, this warmth and comfort. A calm really sets upon me. And I begin to get emotional. As the person gets closer to me, I begin to realize it is what I would vision or understand to be Jesus. It looks like what I understand to be Jesus. Now, some people are going to say, what did it look like? It's not important what it looked like. It was a mental vision. It was a vision that I had. And I knew that it was Jesus to me. That's all that matters. So, as it comes down, that's so derogatory. As he comes down, he hugs me. I'm laying in my bed and he just somehow hugs me. And there I am being held by Jesus. And it was the most wonderful, glorious feeling I have ever felt in my life while I was living. And it was the full sensation of being accepted, which is so powerful if you can really understand what that means. I was absolutely purely loved, unconditional, and I felt, best way I can describe it, is a father to son love. I felt like I was being held by my father's arms, and that nothing in the entire anything that exists could harm me or do wrong to me. Just everything was perfect. And the other thing that I experienced was that I was absolutely forgiven. Now, I obviously began to cry. You can imagine how emotional of an experience this possibly was for me. I didn't know how much I was crying. It wasn't like a cry. It was more like a cry. You get what I'm saying? Just absolute bliss cry. Niagara Falls. Just complete Niagara Falls. The words I heard as I was being hugged was, "Nathan, I love you." That just started it. That started the whole thing. Just there they flow, right? And just the sensation took over me. I literally felt like love, only way I can describe it, was coming in me and flushing out the crud. All the sin, all the darkness, I saw all the black things, and that's like a gunk in my soul. I saw them, and I saw that every tear that I cried was carrying a bit of this black gunk. And it just washed it away with every tear that I cried. And what I understood, because remember I said, whenever God speaks to me, or anybody, is what I believe, it will always come with understanding. And this verbiage understanding that I gained while having the experience was, this is a baptism of tears. And I was just like, wow, okay. Now remember, I'm not a Christian. I don't know what baptism really is. As far as I know, babies get baptized when you're Catholic, and those people who, want to give their life to God, they get baptized. That's honestly about as much as I understand. So here I am being told this is a baptism of tears. I'm not saying it is an official baptism. I'm just saying that's what I understood, okay? So here I am with this cleansing effect, just feeling like I'm being flushed with love, God's personal love. And all of a sudden, it starts to dissipate. You know, he leaves, goes back through the roof, and the roof reforms, and my room looks as it normally looked. So I sat up, I looked down at my shirt, and it was drenched. I took it off, and I could literally wring it out. Not that it was pouring with tears, but I could literally wring it out and make droplets come out. My pillow, even worse. So I was literally flooding. Like, I really don't understand. I wish I had a camera on me, because I can't imagine how much tears this would have taken to make the situation that wet. Do you get what I'm saying? It was crazy. This is where some of you are going to get upset with me, and if I could go back in time, I'd kick myself in the hiney. Let me just say that. After I had this experience, I totally brushed it off. God honest truth. This is what I thought. I thought, wow, that was cool. My higher self just sent an image to me of the Christ light, using New Age terminology here, of the Christ light to let me know that I had finished my recapitulation, that I was forgiven, that my higher self forgave my lower self for being an idiot and for doing all the harm and things that it did. In New Age, there is a term, Christ light or Christ love. And it is understood when this term is used that the highest vibration of love was the love that Jesus expressed, that was the level of vibration that Jesus reached. Now, I didn't have a full understanding. I knew that Jesus, just from being an American and, you know, living in this society, that Jesus was the Son of God, that he died on the cross to save his followers and things like that. I did have that understanding. But as a New Ager who questions everything, my understanding was that Jesus might have been just a prophet, just a man who reached a very high level of understanding like Buddha, but even higher. That he was filled with even more spiritual power, and that he vibrated at even a higher level. It was my understanding that he was a prophet who reached the highest vibration in human form, and that the reason why he died on the cross was to demonstrate how perfect we can live if we don't live for this world. That was the level of understanding I had. So I didn't really know who or what Jesus was still, and I explained that in videos prior to this one. So my understanding of the situation, again, just to be clear, was that this was a vision that my higher self, the universe self, sent me to let me know that I had achieved the cleansed process of recapitulation. I wasn't 100% sure that it was actually the person Jesus who was visiting me. Does this make sense? So I brushed it off and just said, wow, I achieved recapitulation. Now I'm available to open up to the universe even more, to become powerful enough to reach nirvana. It was, you're going to love this part. That's being sarcastic, by the way. You're not going to love this part. It was a month and a half after this experience that I went to the temple to try to become a Buddhist monk. And you're thinking, Nathan, what? You had this experience and you wanted to go be a Buddhist monk? Yep. I was hell-bent on studying everything, you guys. I had way more things to experience and I knew it. So I wouldn't even allow my mind to walk down the path that might maybe lead me to Jesus one day. Do you get what I'm saying? Thus, I didn't create the image because honestly, if I did create the image, I would have made it Buddha-like. I would have made it Buddha came down and hugged me because I was obviously a hardcore Buddhist. This is also how I believe I know that this wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't a something I manifested based upon my upbringing. I was a hardcore Buddhist. I was a month away from wanting to actually submit myself to become a Buddhist monk. So if I would have pictured a enlightened figure or a light figure who forgave me, I would have thought it to be Buddha. Okay, but since I didn't, I knew that this wasn't being manifested by me. Does that make sense? And I only thought that it was my higher subconscious self that understood that it was the Christ light, which is why I was seeing that. Anyways, I think you guys get the point. So this path continues. At the same time that all this is kind of happening, I'm also kind of finishing up my reading of the Quran. I had a soccer coach when I was 13 years old, 14 years old. His name was Ali. He was one of the most kind, gentle people I've ever met in my life. And he was extremely generous but he wasn't a pushover. He was like a real dude. Like, he would crack jokes with you and he'd be real with you. And this really perked my interest with the Quran and Islam. And he was always saying how beautiful the Quran was. So I'm like, yo, I got to check it out. So I started to read it. I'm not going to lie, I immediately picked up on the feeling or the spirit of religion. Very much like the Bible or how I experienced Judaism, Christianity, and Mormonism. I just felt religion. Whereas with Buddhism, it took me having the experience that I did in the temple where I kind of experienced the spirit of religion there. But it wasn't like the spirit of religion with the other religions. I will say that, talking about Buddhism. But as I'm reading the Quran, there are the parts where it comes, you know, this is the right way, my way or the highway, this way or hell. There was that bit, which I understand. It was also traced back to Adam, you know, and Abraham. So I kind of felt it was in that root of Judaism, which ties to Christianity in a way. And that kind of like already was going down a category where I'm like, nope, not touching that. But there was something important. There was a major important part of the Quran that I want to share. That was the part where Muhammad stands before the angel of God. And the angel of God questions Muhammad. He says, Muhammad, when you stand before God, who will you say that you are? And Muhammad replies, I am a servant of Allah. And the angel continues and says, who will you say that Jesus is? And he replied, Jesus is a prophet of Allah, of the Lord. I can't remember exactly which one he chose. Then the angel says, are you the Messiah? And Muhammad says, no. I am only a prophet of the Lord. I'm like, okay, Muhammad's humble dude. He's saying he's just a normal guy. He's saying what all the New Agers kind of believe, that Jesus was just a prophet. You know, he was just a guy who reached a certain level. But then the Quran also further explains that Muhammad was a higher level prophet than Moses and a higher level prophet than Jesus. Now, you just understood the experience I had where I cried my eyes out, being forgiven by the same image of the same individual I saw on the brown cloud. I couldn't swallow the pill that Muhammad was a higher prophet than Jesus, even though I was not for Christianity at all. Saying that Muhammad was higher than Jesus in the vibration, being New Agey, right? I couldn't swallow that pill. I'm just like, nah, I'm reading your stuff, man, and it's just not vibrating with me in that level. The other thing is Muhammad said that there would never be any more prophets after himself. Here I am. I'm not saying I'm a prophet in any way, means, shape, or form, but I am having some pretty interesting experiences throughout the course of my life. So I can only think to myself that if I'm having this, and I'm not anything special, there's got to be somebody else out there who is actually a real prophet or has the opportunity of one day being a legit real prophet. They got to be out there somewhere. So that didn't really vibe with me either. Just putting the lid on something saying I'm the last real prophet until Messiah, that just like, that's it, man. That's another one of those like, you know, it just sealed the deal for me on that. It was like, I'm done. Now, Mormonism, I meant to touch base a little bit more on Mormonism because somebody asked, they said, hey, you never really said what it was about Mormonism you didn't like. You know, the thing about Mormonism is I honestly thought it was great. I have a weird, strange respect for Mormonism. I really do, because the one thing I did seem to experience with Mormons is that actually the ones I knew did read the Book of Mormon from front to back. And it's something that almost every Mormon seems they have to do. And then, you know, there's the 2 years of I guess, evangelism. They go door to door. They kind of spread the word, that kind of thing. I'm like, wow, everybody does this that decides to stick with the program. That to me just seemed really cool. It just seemed like people really followed through and people really cared about their faith. And I wish that I saw more of that in the other religions. The other thing is that my friend's family, Johnny and David, their mom, their dad, and their baby sister died in a car accident. And at the funeral was the most amazing testimonial I've seen to this day. They didn't shed a tear. They were smiles. You could see they genuinely believed and knew in their hearts that their parents and their baby sister were in heaven with God. And it was like they were rejoicing authentically for them being there. And this is a testimonial of their faith. I had not seen faith like that in anybody in any faith system to date. So you say, okay, Nate, we're saying all these good things about Mormonism. Why did you become a Mormon? Well, the whole John Smith thing and the gold plates, and when I did read the Book of Mormon, it just seemed like it was a little bit too much effort. It seemed like it was trying too hard to sound fancy. It didn't seem like it really flowed. It sounded like it was trying to be Elizabethan dialogue, but like overdoing it. Like there was way too many art thous and them theirs and aren't these of doeth. You get what I'm saying? Like not even Shakespeare put that much stuff in his stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it just seemed a little too much for me. And I was a Shakespeare buff. The other thing is where are the gold plates? You know, it was just another Santa Claus, North Pole, Jesus. Like, how does this fit into the category? I didn't have proof. I couldn't go and touch it, smell it, feel it. There was no meditation pose I could do to achieve or see the plates, or there wasn't the seeing stones that I could look into. So when I have to leap with that kind of faith, and the scriptures themselves don't kind of speak to me supernaturally, that seals the deal for me. It's just I don't have the experience I'm being promised I'm going to have. But I obviously noticed other people did, like Johnny and David, so God bless them. But for me, it just didn't ring to be true. And there was this little voice in my ear that said, this isn't it. Okay, so that's all I can go off of right now. That will be further explained later. But that's my experiences with Buddhism, Mormonism, and the Quran and Islam. I hope this hasn't bored you guys too much. This is really important stuff. The next video, we're going to get into the season where I become a full-fledged New Ager. The whole situation I experienced with these three religions that I was open to at least, caused me to slingshot deeper and further into the rabbit holes of New Ageism. My connections and resources and availability of the Deepak Chopra Center there in the community I grew up in, along with a bookstore around the corner called the Psychic Eye Bookshop, which I had not mentioned in video number 4. These two things provided La Jolla, San Diego to become this mecca, this wealth of experiences and information for any religious system or practice you could think of. And I say religious and spiritual paths, but I also mean supernatural things. Things like dreaming and dream translations, astrology, tarot card readings, all forms of tarots, crystal balls, crystals, incense, candles, herbs, spices, trinkets, imagery, dealing with like power objects, things like this. You could learn and find a book on any religion you wanted or spiritual practice, from paganism to Native American faith systems, shamanisms around the world, mythologies from around the world, Wicca, witchcraft, becoming a warlock, Satanism. I mean, just, you guys get the point, right? Anything and everything, including actually Christianity, Catholicism, and kind of branches off of those as well. Any book you could think of, and if they didn't have it, you could order it. They had a Rolodex, they didn't have computers quite yet, you know, with Google. They had computers, but not Google yet. So what you would do is you would go through like a book of the book you were looking for, or CD or music, or, you know, spell piece you needed, or anything like that, and then they would order it for you. The only thing I don't think you could get there was stuff for like Sanctoria, meaning like chickens and goats. I don't think they sold that stuff. If they did, they had to do it in the back, because I never saw a chicken or goat hanging around. But you guys get the point. That is how I ended up learning about all the other faith systems. There's no really need for me to go down every single stinking one. In the next video, you're going to learn about some highlight stuff that has to deal with my out-of-body experiences, my astral projection, and the day I became a Toltec shaman. If you don't know what Toltec shamanism is, the books or the things I would have you guys look into until you get to the next video, if it's not yet made. If it is made, then just go to the next video and I'll tell you all about it. If it's not yet made, I would look into the books, The Teachings of Don Juan by Carlos Castaneda. I believe he wrote 11 or 12 books, and this was basically my new Bible, these 12 books. Now, as I say that, usually when I make these sentences, I'll get a comment on each video where I make statements like that, where I'm kind of telling you how I'm going to teach you about a faith system, and that seems to tick off people pretty bad. I don't know why, because if you haven't learned yet, I go through them. This is a season of my life. We will get through it. It's what I call the dark forest of my spiritual path. Between the ages of 16 to about 19, 20 years old is the season where I jump into anything and everything, no matter how dangerous, no matter how dark it is. This season passes. I get through this dark forest. And when I come out the other end, God himself is waiting there for me. And then he says, okay, Nathan, you done being an idiot? Now I'm going to tell you the truth. So I hope you guys will get through this dark forest with me. It is an important, very vital and important season of my life because it gives weight and understanding to what comes after it. I'm going to ask you not to hold on to any of the trees that you might see in this forest. I know I'm being metaphorical here, but I feel this is the best way to describe so that we can go forward through this in the most smooth way. You might hear things that are like totally hard for you to hear or totally sit there and go, Nathan, why are you telling people this stuff? Let it go. Just walk right past the tree. Don't pay any dang attention to it. Honestly, majority of this stuff is not all that important. What is important about it, I will reference back to. Everything I'm saying does have importance, but it's not going to be the thing that most people are going to hear and think is important. Not the thing that they're going to grab onto and want to run with in the wrong direction. What is important about these things is the understanding it gives me when God begins to talk to me again. So I hope that you guys hear that, understand what I'm saying and what I mean by that, and for videos number 6 and 7 that you won't get stuck on the wacky, crazy, out of this world kind of stuff. Thank you guys very much. I know this probably was the least interesting video. I hope it was okay for you though, and I hope you learned something new. Remember guys, give this a thumbs up. Be sure to post your comments. Also, continue to share these videos with people, but as you do that, please let the people know to watch videos number 1 up to the current video. Make sure that they don't just watch the video you're posting. But I do appreciate so much how much you guys are pushing this channel. It is really growing super fast. It's already become really hard for me to keep up with the comments and emails, which is awesome. That's what we want. So thank you guys very much for your patience. Also, be sure to go to facebook.com/truthmefree. It's a great way to stay in touch because I can actually respond better on my cell phone there and reply to emails and so forth as well. And also there is a Twitter. I'm going to try to start using that more as well. It's twitter.com/truthmefree or #truthmefree. I'm not really sure how that works still, but I'm learning. So bear with me on that. And you guys remember, ye shall know the truth and it shall set you free. I'm Nathan Wheeler. Thank you and God bless.